touch with BBC Radio Scotland.
You can call our free phone number on 08085 92 95 00. Text 80295. Standard message rates apply.
This is BBC Radio Scotland.
But, let me bring in, we've got Yer Cohen with us, who's a lawyer who specialises in internet law. Good morning to you, Yer.
Good morning.
Good morning. And please feel free to pick me up on the pronunciation of your name. Have I got it right or wrong?
Absolutely perfect, as always.
Oh, that's kind of you. I know you're based in London here, but you are familiar with the differences in Scottish law, in Scots law. Is this a territory that the law just cannot really get itself involved in?
The law should be getting itself involved in. It is really a matter of catching up with technological development. So in the early days of the internet was considered nearly a lawlessness area. So there was no policing, there was no regulation, so people could say whatever they wanted, and that started to create a little bit of confusion because we almost developed two types of society: the offline society, which is heavily regulated, and there's police, and you cannot harass people, and you can only say certain things. And then you have the online society, which you can do whatever you want. But the reality is there is only one society. It is just that the rules had not been applied properly to the internet. And that started to create a lot of confusion. So we are seeing younger generation. I mean, we're talking about a 15-year-old kid who might, there could be a lot of confusion there because people think that, well, on the internet I'm allowed to behave in a particular way because it is just one of those things. The reality is that the police has been very, very slow to react. There has been policies by the prosecution services that we do not prosecute online abuse and online harassment. But it is exactly the same thing. I mean, imagine I stood outside your house every single day with a megaphone and just followed you and shouted abuse. That certainly wouldn't be acceptable. I'd be arrested after a day or two.
And as a victim of that, you would feel very entitled to call the police, and you would have an expectation that the police would take some form of action.
Indeed. And the internet is a type of a megaphone, and it is there 24/7. And the abuse is the same abuse. So there is absolutely no reason why that megaphone should be allowed whilst the other one shouldn't. It's not about the megaphone, really. It's not about the person who's shouting the abuse. It is about the victim. It is about the victim who is feeling harassed and distressed, and there is nowhere they can go for help. So what we need to do, we need to start realizing it is exactly the same thing. If a police officer asks you to identify yourself on the street because you are suspected of committing a crime, it will be a crime for you not to provide this type of identification. But if someone asks you to do that online and you refuse, then there are no consequences. So that cannot be right.
Well, and again, that's one of the discussions we have as to whether or not on social media sites we should have anonymity, or people should be forced to identify themselves so that they can be traceable. I think that is a great analogy that Yer gives us, actually. And when you see that, when you visualise it in your head, then it seems obvious that action needs to be taken. But because it is so complex, and we have had a bit of a talking shop over the last 50 minutes, which I've found fascinating, I have to say. But I think what we tend to do is, because it is difficult to pick apart all the strands, because our basic position for all of us is that we do want to defend freedom of speech, is that we forget the victims of this kind of abuse. We forget the impact that it has on people. We forget the hurt and the harm that it causes. And we've heard from Lindsay this morning, but we haven't really heard otherwise, from people, that this really does have a negative impact on people's lives and is affecting, I think, particularly our young people and their development and their sense of confidence. And maybe we don't focus on those consequences enough. And if we did, then we might have more urgency about trying to do something. Thought of the law trying to catch that in a fishing net is unfathomable. So what can you do?
The important thing is that we accept the fact that there is a victim there, and that freedom of speech can only go as far as the law permits it to go. And this is something we all accept. I mean, there's no question about free speech being an ultimate right. So once we have accepted that, we also need to accept the fact that online harassers, online trolls, they do not go away. Very rarely do they just leave you and go elsewhere. And their behavior, because of we might not go now into why people harass and abuse other people online, but the nature of things is that their behavior tend to escalate over time. And victims of harassment on the internet nearly always report an escalation in behavior. So they might go to the police will say just ignore it, and then there is an escalation in volume, in nature of the threats, and all the rest of it. So what is very, very important is to go after those people and to prosecute them and to create examples and to send a very clear message to society that this is not acceptable, because I presume that most people in society don't want this to happen to them or to their daughters or to the mother or to the husband, and it is pretty much accepted this type of behavior should not be allowed. And there is a long-term impact. Just one more thing. There's a long-term impact here, which is very, very similar to post-traumatic stress disorder, that is a lasting impact on victims of online harassment, and it might take them years to recover. And the legal system has to start acknowledging the huge impact that this act of harassment has on the victim and start taking a tougher approach.
Touch with BBC Radio Scotland.
You can call our free phone number on 08085 92 95 00. Text 80295. Standard message rates apply.
This